Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Well, today I'm continuing my St. Paddy's Day Leprethon, and we are talking about Leprechaun 3. Directing duties on this one are overtaken by Brian Trenchard Smith, and it was written by David Dubois. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if I'm butchering that, sir. He hadn't seen the previous two films, and he was just asked to give them some sort of a script based on the pitch of the Leprechaun being in Las Vegas. Which is helpful to keep in mind while you're watching this, because just like the previous two, this one does not tie into the greater lore of the franchise whatsoever. If there even was any lore, which there really isn't. Going into this one, I had already sort of started to accept that these movies were not going to be connected in any sort of really meaningful way, and that they were essentially going to be anthology entries. But nevertheless, it is important to remember that this was not written by someone who watched either of the previous films, because there are some little contradictions in terms of the powers of the gold and things like that here. Which is just a nitpick, I'm happy to say, because once again, on its own terms, this is a very fun and entertaining little campy horror comedy. I think honestly I probably liked the second one just a little bit more, but even still, if you paired the second and third movie together for an evening, I think that you would be just fine. Warwick Davis, of course, continues to have more and more fun with this character, and they do let him cut loose here in ways that he couldn't really in the previous films. Like there's that little sequence where he has that impromptu number with the Elvis impersonator. And even though, if I'm being honest, it does feel a little bit like a sort of, dance, puppy dance moment, a little on the cutesy side, because it's Warwick Davis, it's charming and it's done with some panache. And some of his jokes and limericks here are incredibly corny and stupid, probably intentionally so. But one way or the other, what kind of redeems them and makes them work is his sheer gusto and energy as a performer. Like, if you're not actually laughing at the joke, you're still sort of laughing at how much, like, just sheer calorie expenditure Warwick Davis injects into it. He is just giving like 150% at a minimum in this movie. I mean, sheer bravado can't always transcend a lame joke, but it does help. And just like the best Elm Street movies, here they find the perfect mix for the Leprechaun between being a supernatural tormentor and a sadistic slasher. Like, on the one hand, you have the kill near the end where he literally cuts the magician in half. Nice sense of poetic justice there, because that guy was a bit of a dick, let's be honest. And then you also have some surprisingly ambitious and also surprisingly well executed for their budget kills, involving the Leprechaun manipulating people on a more psychological level. I mean, when Mitch, the casino owner, is killed, it's already an interesting moment and kind of a nice surprise when that girl actually starts crawling out of the TV. Again, that whole sequence does feel very sort of Nightmare on Elm Street to me, until it's revealed that it's not just the Leprechaun fucking with him. Well, it is, but more so, he's actually arranged some sort of primitive robot to be on top of Mitch, even though he thinks it's this fantasy girl from the TV. And when it cuts to the image of this sort of like cobbled together animatronic figure, there is something kind of off-putting about it. I mean, it was obviously done on a relatively low budget, but I thought that it was a very good example of how you can make a low budget work to your advantage. When he inflates Loretta's chest, her butt, her lips to the point where she explodes, man, that was just like, it was like something out of a Brian Usna movie, honestly. That was the vibe that I got. Like, it felt like something that you might expect to see in a movie like Society. And it's so cruel because not only is it exacerbating Lorita's deepest insecurities, but on top of that, while she was not like a model human being by any stretch based on what we see in this movie, she has just been getting screwed over royal by everybody for about as long as she's been living, from what I can tell. Based on this movie, if that's any precedent, she's been a bit of a doormat her whole life. Like, oh, it's so mean, so mean. For all her insecurities, she does not deserve to go out that way. But again, An awesome, awesome, gleefully sadistic and cruel kill. Compared to everyone else in the movie, that pawn shop owner in the opening act gets off real easy. That pawn shop owner, by the way, he probably has the single best line in the whole movie, right in the opening scene when a guy walks in with the leprechaun who's still in a petrified form and trapped under the spell of a medallion. And he's trying to pawn it as a statue. And he argues with the pawn shop owner that it's a very reliable good luck charm, or maybe he just says, "Hey, take this. It's a good luck charm." And the pawn shop owner looks at this guy who's, got an eye patch, is hobbling, nursing other injuries too, and just very sort of dryly says, "Yes, and I can tell it's working very well." Just, I don't know. Maybe it won't have the same effect on you, but I loved that moment. I thought the delivery was perfect. Before we get into that side of things a little bit more, the one other thing I want to say about the leprechaun himself is that the only sort of downside that I saw here was that he's essentially cast adrift in a plot that really belongs to the human characters. I mean, yes, lest you forget, he wants his gold, but really, in this case, that's almost more of a MacGuffin that kind of just puts everything in motion. Because, yes, I mean, people's greed and hunger for gold and wish fulfillment is what, is driving the plot, and you wouldn't have that without the leprechaun and his pot of gold. But when you really think about the development of the story involving our supporting characters, like our romantic lead and the other supporting characters in this movie and the cast, like, if you think about all of them, weighed against the leprechaun's story, he's not really all that essential to what's happening until it's time for one of these people to be eliminated. And speaking of the plot, while the plot itself is cohesive and it makes sense and it's not really hard to follow, there's enough story here for an entire series. I mean, the way the movie opened up, I was kind of thinking it was going to just mainly revolve around sort of the, uneasy agreement or arrangement that the pawn shop owner and the leprechaun have to make, until obviously that didn't work. Sorry, guy. From there, you've got the plot with the two romantic leads involving a guy coming into town. He's a college student who has just fallen for a gal named Tammy, who is an aspiring magician who works as a magician's assistant at the casino owned by the douchebag Mitch. Scott's also got his entire bankroll from his parents for college and tuition and shit like that he's going to go and bet the farm on at the casino because he's convinced he can win. He doesn't win. Then he goes to the pawn shop across the road, finds one of the lucky coins, takes it back to the casino. Loretta and Fazio both start fighting over it because they both have things of their own that they want to overcome. Loretta and Tammy both have an uneasy relationship with the casino owner Mitch. Scott's also starting to transform into a leprechaun because he mixes his blood with the leprechauns as a result of a fight. Mitch has thugs hounding him because he owes them money and he's in a bit of shit. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It makes for some fun stuff along the way, like when it gets to a point where Scott is on the verge of almost going full leprechaun. He and the leprechaun duke it out, not just in a physical fight, even though you get a little bit of that, but the real highlight is when they have their limerick battle. Yeah, that actually happens. I'm not making that up. The two of them have a limerick battle back and forth, like this is the Irish 8 Mile or something. It's amazing. And while the whole scope of the gold's corrupting influence feels perhaps a little bit ambitious for a movie of this nature, it does still make for an interesting sort of underlying theme. But honestly, and I swear to God for anyone who's wondering, I don't have a big hate on for blondes or anything like that, okay? Seriously. But the actress playing Tammy, Lee Armstrong, just like Siobhan Durkin in Leprechaun 2, this girl's performance is one of the big leaks in the boat, and one of the main reasons that there is, again, almost zero chemistry between our two would-be romantic leads. And also, just like that previous film, it's a bit of a shame because the character does have some nice zingers. There is some good wit in the dialogue, but her delivery is completely flat. I mean, at least Siobhan Durkin was trying, even if she only knew how to try one face. You know, she was still putting in an effort. Lee Armstrong, though, is just like, honest to God, like her delivery is just like this. I am so happy. Can't you tell by the way I am so forcefully and passionately expressing myself? Boy, I guess the movie's over and I should go home now. Either she picked the wrong pursuit or she just did not give one single solitary shit about this movie. And she was just there for a payday. I don't know, that kind of thing just tends to kind of get me down a little bit. Like, I know that these movies are not like high elevated art or anything like that, but come on here, you have the opportunity, the amazing opportunity and privilege to be part of a movie, a motion picture, something that is on a screen that people watch to escape and have an adventure. You get to be a part of this amazing process. Don't phone it in. I don't care how lame you think the movie is. You can think it's lame, but you keep that to yourself. You're there to do the best you can. Don't come on set even for a second if you're going to be cynical about it. Okay, I'll calm down now. The sermon is ended for Pastor Gammer. On the whole, despite myself, another surprisingly fun watch. I don't know if I necessarily agree with Warwick Davis's assessment that this is the best one, although I can understand why he would make that argument. And yes, the Jameson still remains untapped. I've had a few people warn me that this next one, Leprechaun in Space, might be the one to finally drive me to drink. It looks like Brian Trenchard Smith returns as the director in this one, and I'm pretty sure he's the first returning director this franchise has had thus far. So that bodes well, I would like to think. But then again, there's been plenty of times in the past where I've thought things were going to be a home run and I've been sorely wrong about that. So we will wait and see. So yeah, Leprechaun in Space, here we come. Beam me up. We'll see what that one has in store. Thanks so much for watching this one, of course. Look for the next installment real soon, and I will catch you all later. Have a great Saturday.